Hi, this is Machiavelli, and I'm older than the esports historian here on Thorin's YouTube channel.
Right, this is going to be another episode of my donator discussion. And for this one, right, Kris, this is the first one you've ever done, right?
No, this is round two.
Okay.
But I definitely don't mind jumping off. Yeah.
Fair enough. What was your background then from the other one? I forget this one. Were you on the last one?
Yeah, I was on the. I wasn't on the last one. I was on the one previous to this one. But big CS:GO guy, right? So I'm watching ESL One Cologne.
Okay.
And, I figured we could lead off the conversation with
do it
with a little ESL One Cologne discussion, right? You know, first LAN, right? As we continue to be bombarded with the reminder of. But I mean, to be fair, with good purpose, right? Because I mean, now we have a whole another layer of the viewership experience where we get to see team dynamics. We can make up stories about some players and their dynamic and how they fit into the team. It's great. We can only do so much of that on when we're watching people through a webcam.
Sure.
And so there's the stage. Any kind of initial thoughts? Because I've got a couple of things in my back pocket.
Just lead with one. Yeah, just give us one.
Yeah. So I mean, let's talk about Faze, baby. Oh man, it is so rare to watch a team that is so satisfying to watch, even when they win, even when they lose. Just the character in which they play in the game, you can see that there's just almost like a heroic element to the way in which they play. The way in which they call onto sites. It reminds me of the Counter-Strike that I was watching when I first really got into it, which was back in 2015, 2016. And maybe that style is like leading them down a road that isn't going to give them as much success. You know, they've kind of struggled against bigger opponents that they've kind of yet to play. As of right now, they are set to play against Vitality in the next round. And, you know, maybe that style is going to get them some success, but I'm not sure. But because the idea is that all of their play style revolves around Kerrigan's calling and the reads on the opponents, and just the style of their play is so exciting to watch because they're doing the crazy stuff that people have been doing online for ages on LAN, and it is excellent because you could see other teams starting to play a lot more reserved, you know, as the saying goes, playing more not to lose than playing to win. And just seeing Kerrigan make incredibly, sometimes kind of silly, but very aggressive moves that normally online would be kind of nothing. You would see that all the time. But now with this more reserved play starting to propagate throughout all the teams, it's so refreshing. It's so exciting watching all of the drama unfold. I don't know if you felt the same way about Faze specifically, but yeah, oh man, it's a pleasure. Such a pleasure.
Anyone else have any Faze related thoughts?
I mean,
it doesn't have to be specifically just about this match, obviously, but if you depends what you want to go on.
I mean, for me, it's what do they need? Like, what is a good result for them? Because they've been on such a bad win rate. It's like a almost comically bad win rate.
Oh, terrible! Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Is it now? I mean, the thing is, against Astralis, it was a bit heartbreaking that they picked this 2, which is always risky, and then they barely lose on the second map. So it's not like they're worse than Astralis, but I want them to beat Astralis to consider it a good run.
Sure.
So if they lose now, if Zaiwu comes online and they get out, like, do they just change the lineup? Because they need a very good result here. And they're already on the second live. So I'm also very excited. I'm just a bit sad that they had that close match against Astralis. Like, all of their losses recently have been close, and if it happens again, it would be a bit heartbreaking. But I do agree. I don't know if it was Rich or someone saying, I do want to give them more time, even with this bad win rate, because it is amazing to see.
It's kind of a vintage, like the Faze Astralis matchup definitely was a hearkening back to the old rivalry, but I feel like there was a lot of pressure on Kerrigan from the get-go, and we know how Kerrigan typically starts off in teams. It's high performing from the get-go, and I don't think he was that high performing with mouse ports, and it's kind of the same thing here. And I do want to give them the time because they are improving, because those were great games, but I want to see better out of them.
Yeah. And you know what? They're facing Vitality next. And if you want to talk about a team that is on the ropes that you could throw a couple of quick punches at to really like get a knockout under your belt, that is the team to do it, because they look terrible. They look abominable. Like when I was watching the Navi Vitality game that was just a few minutes ago, they looked completely dejected. Now I don't know if that's Navi. Let me put it this way: I don't think that's Navi being good. Yeah, I don't think that was Navi being good, because they did not look like they were playing very well. Like it was it was a mess. But like if you want to talk about getting a legit win under your belt, if you're Faze, that is the perfect. I would have been terrified if they had to play Navi in the next round, right? But Vitality, I think that's perfect. You know, if you really want to get a really impressive like win under your belt, you know, that's going to solidify maybe a potential playoff run. I think that's the right opponent for them, for sure.
The problem I think they have in Faze is they still don't really have like the star element of the team figured out. Like Twists is good, but even then he's not like some simple Zero like mega 1v9 carry. He never will be. Like there's still a reasonable expectation to have. So my problem is I don't really know like who's the second star in this team. There isn't really one. They just kind of cycle and they just hope Olofmeister has a good game or Rain has a good game or Brokey wins a bunch of clutches and gets some AWP kills. Like that's my main problem. Is like they've got the problem with Faze is they're a bit like OG. Like the basis of the team is really good. And they're the most obvious teams where if you had unlimited money, you could just make them like the best tomorrow, maybe with like one big, I mean, it's probably robs to both teams, quite frankly. But if you could make one of these moves, it would be the easiest to fix. But that's also, I think, what makes the teams tough. Like, I actually find both teams quite similar because since they're both based around IGLs that have similar styles or what they want to do is similar, at least they even have the same fucking map pool in most cases because it's based on the playing style. I find them very enjoyable to watch. Like, I've even seen OG lose loads of games that were still, like, quite sort of satisfying to watch. Because the thing is, when a caller actually is for real calling on what they think just in the spur of the moment, you can, like, the ones, like, that have a really good feel for the game, basically, it's just going to be really enjoyable to watch them play. It doesn't actually matter if you win the T rounds in that case. Like, you can just see if they have a good feel for the game and whether their read is correct. But you can't do anything about what the players do once they're on the bomb site or they're in a 1vx or someone misses a shot. You can't do anything for that. But I actually do feel like this team, the thing is, I feel like they might have gotten lucky with when these lands have started again, because their lineup on paper, even when they had Cold Zero, already screamed like this lineup would be about twice as good on LAN, whereas obviously some of these other teams is going to be half as good for similar reasons. So if anything, I think they might have actually just been saved by the fact that a bunch of lands are coming back. Like, even just the performance at IM Cologne so far, they certainly don't look like they'll win the event or go deep, but already they look way better just in exactly the same games they would have lost online. Like, they could lose every game online, mate. They were terrible. So this is one of the reasons why I actually feel so bad for that Cloud9 lineup way back. They had the same qualities, except they didn't have the superstar player, obviously. But they used to also lose every game super close. And if you looked at some of their players, you just thought, like, imagine if you could actually play a LAN versus these teams, you would actually see if one of these would be a win. So I think the main problem is this. They've sort of been saved by the fact that there's two factors, really. One is, as far as I can tell, if the buyout is right, they probably will buy ROPS at some point in time. Like, that's one of those deals where every single party wants it to happen. It's just whether they can agree on the number. So one, they probably get the upgrade anyway, which means it doesn't necessarily matter if you bomb now. But secondly, because the lands have just come, in theory it saved you. The only way it hasn't is the sense that, like, I don't think you can actually have the placings with this 5-man lineup that you're supposed to. So in a way, you sort of are playing catch-up you can never catch up on. Because realistically, when Carrigan joined the team, you're supposed to like win events, come top 4, be a threat to be a contender. So you're probably not going to do that with this lineup being reasonable. But luckily, in my opinion, unlike the Cloud9 example, well, I mean, they sort of gave this implication, it just wasn't true. There is, as far as I can tell, there is literally zero actual pressure on Carrigan. Like, FaZe Clan is totally in on the idea they brought him in to be the long-term leader. It looks as though they're not putting any pressure. And by the way, the fact that they're not immediately going and buying another player even suggests to me there's time to work this out. So even though I personally don't like that much, I would rather just tell them, like, look, what do you need now? Like, because in my opinion, either works or it doesn't. You either give the person what he needs to make it work, in which case it works now, or just get the fuck out. You have to blow it up and start over. So I don't necessarily know the way FaZe to deal with it, but look, I think it will resolve itself. Like, I personally think this is still one piece away as a team. It's just that it's pretty obvious as to who it should be, and hopefully just get the deal done.
Yeah, and to be fair too, like if you even make a move based on this particular tournament performance, is that even going to net you any money? Because this is a LAN event. And then what do we do immediately after this? We go right back to online play, right? I guess if you have sights set on the major, sure. Like, okay, maybe you can make a move that makes your LAN team a little better, but you still got fundamental problems online. Like there are still issues with this team that will continue to manifest themselves. And I don't know that maybe taking one piece and replacing it with somebody else, like maybe slotting Rops into, I don't know, enter player name here, right? I don't even know if that solves problems, right? And if you do, like, oh boy, is that the $1 million answer? Oh boy, I don't know if I'm putting my $1 million chips on that. Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't know. I still have. There's lots of question marks. There's a couple of question marks. Let me put it this way. There's a couple of question marks that maybe a couple of players could answer, but with every question mark that you answer, 2 or 3 more pop up, right? And I don't know. Faze is in an interesting position. Now, how they go the rest of this tournament may shape all of this discussion, right? Like maybe this will age well as soon as it hits YouTube, right? Like, oh yeah, Faze ended up winning the whole tournament. Great, yeah, cheers.
So yes, to be fair, Faze, the actual org, never seemed to give a flying fuck even when the team wasn't placing that well, even when they had all the massive names. And remember, much like North, they are a team that the entire time has been paying the enormous salaries to everyone. Like there was never a year they just like chilled and so like put it this way, it's certainly possible that one of the people who joined as like a trial, like a Dren, Neo, they might not have been on the max salary. There might be a world where they maybe gave them like half or something. But put it this way, the reason why motherfuckers like Olofmeister just won't retire until you take the fucking mouse out of their cold dead hands is because they just get paid 20k a month. So the joke is, it's like my old joke about Virtus Pro, the Polish team. It's like you look around, the results aren't good. You used to be legendary. But what you're saying is, one of us should really retire. Of course, I'm probably going to stay on the next month myself. But, if you want to use what to retire first, no one. Right, I'll do a tweet. Tell you what, I'll do a tweet and we'll get another 2 weeks. Like, that's what it was like because they really understood the formula became every month you stay is another $20,000. And if you're some fucking guy from Poland who used to be poor 10 years earlier, you might just find a way to stay a few more months, even if your heart wasn't in it 5 months earlier. So the thing is, I don't feel as though the difference is this, right? Cloud9, the org, already showed you in the past they're a bit skittish about Counter-Strike. They've changed their mind on the project a bunch of times. They've basically tried to exit CS and then come back in sort of a bit cynically. So the difference was, even though we didn't know it at the time, there was a timer on the Cloud9 project. Shocking as it was, doesn't actually seem to be any pressure on FaZe Clan at all. In fact, the good thing to me is, as far as I can tell, what brought the Carrigan move around was actually called Zera, and then now any further move, I would imagine again, will be based on players demanding it. So I actually feel like, if anything, the Rops move probably does happen eventually. I don't think it happens before the major, just because, like, first of all, it's not that much time, and then secondly, like, if you're going to do that, you may as well just actually get the A/B test of what happens when you play the major, fail that, and then you'd have to do it. Thing is, though, I personally do think it's like every move carries some risk with it, but this actually, to me, is one of the most obvious slam dunk moves you could ever make. Like, I can't really even see what the downside would be. He's already worked with Carrigan. He's literally a star player that has zero ego, basically, in like the negative sense. I even feel like if you look at the roles, there wouldn't even be a problem with the role overlap. Like, to me, it's just one of those ones where, as I say, every person, as far as I know in this deal, wants to do it. It's just, can they agree with the number? Because, unsurprisingly, I don't blame them. Mousebots wants the number to be as high as possible. But put it this way, it's like I said on that episode of By the Numbers ages ago, to me, the only person in the entire world of Counter-Strike was a more eligible free agent. I mean, it wasn't technically a free agent, but would have been Device. But he just, for some reason, didn't test the market and just went only to NIP. Like, once you get past that, because obviously it goes without saying, like, Simple, it fucking speaks Russian. Z, who the fuck knows what he speaks? He doesn't speak. So these players are by default, Device and Rops, and like, and Nico as well to some degree. These are the most obvious, like, free agent people you could get in the whole world. So I don't hate the idea of the buyouts that much. It's just the problem is, FaZe has to sort of agree with me that this is the last piece you need, therefore it's worth it. No one's doing it for money, by the way. Money is irrelevant. Everyone is... Just go read the thread that Lurpus posted today. Essentially, the Counter-Strike space is losing over $50 million a year. Now, it doesn't matter how many of you type PogChamp in a Twitch, back when that was all right, or say, oh, I love Team Liquid on Reddit. None of that does anything to anyone's bottom line. This is what fans don't understand. So, like, really... This is why I don't understand why fans ever try to talk about signings as though it was an actual business, like a sport. Like, oh, I think this is a good signing. if you're a fan, I'm not even joking, you know that meme that everyone's doing at the moment, where it's like an IQ bell curve, and then it's like the moron who has the 70 IQ and the genius who has the 130 IQ. In the meme, they always have the same thought, but just like a different version of it, you know. And then the guy in the middle, which is all the normal plebs, like, you know, just the people with like 80 to 100 IQ, they all think whatever like the NPC take is. Basically, it should be like that. The NPC take in Counter-Strike is this, like, oh, I don't know if really he was worth that much. And then the low IQ and the super IQ takes go like this. Fuck it, it's not my money, mate. So let's just put the good players on the good teams. Like, that's it. That's actually Counter-Strike. You may as well just sit back and just hope people do waste the money. It is a waste of money, but you're the one who gets to enjoy the benefit of it, right? As fucked up as it sounds. So for me, I already skipped this years ago. I skipped the part of esports where it was ever going to be a sustainable business. That's like some stupid middle management buzzword shit. I don't know why fans are wasting their time with that. What you should do as a fan for real is what happens if you're a fan of like American franchise sports or the English Premier League in soccer. Just sit back and watch a bunch of billionaires use fucking sports stars as their playthings and hope they just waste all their money and make a super sick team that's mega loaded. Just, you know, that's all you can do. We don't really have any say in any of this shit. None of it makes sense. So just sit back and watch the show.
And to be fair, like Faze is probably one of the few orgs that can actually bankroll a buyout like that and just
of course.
That, no problem. Yeah.
I mean, mate, right now they're literally just ripping off like fucking charities and shit. So yeah, they've got money up the arse, haven't they? So it's great. Allegedly.
Hey, they're crowdfunded by kids who want to buy crypto. It's great.
There you go. You know? Listen, if there's anyone deserves to get ripped off more, people who are into that shit. Let's be real. Right, what's the next topic then? What we're going to next? I will say as well, by the way, here's one detail that people haven't thought of, though, with the whole Faze thing. I'm just loving watching all the people come out the woodwork who've now decided over this part of 2021 this means Carrigan sucks, right? Because what they haven't realised is this. I just chill, mate. I just sit back. I let them keep stacking up their arguments. And then here's what I do. In about 6 months, every one of those arguments applies to Glaive post-device. There you go. Because, by the way, on paper, Glaive has way better talent than Carrigan does. What are you talking about? So, what I remember... all the Astralis fans were the ones who said Device wasn't a hard carry and that those MVPs were, you know, just by a cunt's hair. So it's now time for all the other players. By the way, by the logic of the people who are Carrigan haters, who tend to just be automatically at Glaive zealots, logically, Device leaving shouldn't even stop Glaive winning all the majors.
Nope.
No, I didn't make that logic up. I'm not trapped in that maze myself. I think that's a totally unreasonable perspective. But that is the rod they are making for their own back when they do that.
Yeah, and I think in December or something, we were discussing future HLTV top ranking. And I was probably stupidly now looking back, arguing that Zibnix should probably be in top 20. Basically, all of Astralis should be in top 20. And yeah, so then if you have 4 of your players are HLTV top 20, how come are you not winning everything?
Yeah. I mean, listen, even if you take into account like systems element of like, my Device was your AWPer, yeah, okay, then you need an AWPer, right? But aside from that, as you're saying, you have in theory got way better pieces at all the other positions than everyone else, you know?
Yeah.
Why is that not equivalent? Why is that equivalent to results? It shouldn't be, of course. I'm just saying this is the stupid way people do stuff.
So speaking of teams of that type, how about Team Liquid? Like, they're obviously not doing great.
Let me just do a sidebar here. Here's how we're going to start the Team Liquid conversation, because no one else starts this one. What they do is this, and I'm just bored of it, mate, is we keep pretending like lineups today are the same as lineups 2 years ago when we basically had lands, right? So everyone still talks about Team Liquid. This is worse than the whole Faze has 5 stars thing. Dude, people are talking like this Liquid is the one that just finished the Grand Slam. Where the fuck are all the players? What? This isn't even Team Liquid. This is just Elysian NAF. That's it. Like, Stewie's there, but now he's the IGL. Like, what? That wasn't even the original arrangement. Like, what I don't get is this. You have to, like, change your expectations. You have to change what you think of the team. You have to change the way you conceptualize them. Because at this point in time, they only have 3 of the same players, but one has a fundamentally changed role. They've got a totally different style of AWPer in fall. Like, mate, to me, this team's totally different. So I don't mind talking about them, but let's just drop the fucking baggage of 2019, you know, because to me, it just isn't the same team at all.
Yeah, I feel like they've kind of fallen into the trap of every 3 to 6 months they make a change to try and reset the clock of, oh, wait, this team's kind of falling apart and is turning into an absolute mess. No, wait, we changed the coach. It's coming back. We're doing it. We not only are we the same team as we were 6 months ago, we actually made an upgrade. So we're actually better than we were before. But the results they've never really shown up. I mean, I think they did well in a blast, like in a blast group stage or something like that, right? Like that's really like the peak, of like things that have been done to improve. And I think that was after Fallen initially joined, right? So I mean, like the team, as you know, it's basically broken apart into a million pieces. And Stewie and Fallen were IGLing, but Fallen wasn't IGLing, but he was doing up all the comms, and Team Liquid, poor NA fans, because I mean, you've got no other team to really root for, right? Like, I guess you've got Twists, doing his own thing. Rush is on his own failed project with Complexity. This is like, I don't know. Is this something that's more endemic of how North American people are? Because I don't know if this is something that is. This team is so confusing to me because they have all of the right moves on paper. They've done all of the right moves on paper. Anytime that there's a move that's coming up, they've gone it on the right time. Their team, their in-game leader was becoming an issue. Okay, they brought in Fallen. Great. He's also an opper. Great. He needed an opper. Perfect. Coach is not doing so well. Brought in Moses. Great. Brings the team up a level. Okay, now Moses isn't doing so well. Let's bring in another coach. They've done all the right moves, but never have they actually reaped any benefit. Like they're still basically at the same level as they were 6 months ago. They're still basically at the same level they were 9 months ago. They're still falling off of a cliff ever since 2019, right? I don't know what this team. This is like watching Fnatic for me, where it's like, and COVID hit and just basically turned this team into dust, right? Like their mindset's just has completely fallen apart. No pun intended. And I feel so bad because this is like the NA. This is best NA has to offer. Because I mean, let's be real, Evil Genius is a joke right now. Like that's the only real North American team left, and it's basically completely capitulated. And this isn't even that good.
Do you think
Any
they're
other
still in
thoughts?
it? Because, I mean, so in League of Legends, they're obviously still spending money, obviously also making terrible decisions, but they're spending the money. So they're still, going for number one. Do you think they still have that ambition here, or are they like waiting for NACS to come back, or?
The problem is this, like, I do completely still think to this day, like, put it this way, Team Liquid is one of the only orgs I talked to during all this online period who basically just told me what they said in that esports salon episode. They don't actually think CS ecosystem's in that bad a space, relative to like where they are positioned. They think the salaries are all right. They, they wish maybe like Valve would give you more money from skins or something. But aside from that, they don't think it's the end of the world. They think the ESL Louvre agreement's fine. And they're sort of they're one of the only sets of people that's not on like either side. They just sort of think everything's fine at the moment and they're just chilling. So as far as I get the perspective, they're not actually a team that's sort of like closed up the coffers and won't spend money. Like as Kris here is saying, they've made loads of moves. If you look during this online period, they've made loads of moves, not even 2 coaching changes. The issue to me is this. One thing I don't think a lot of fans understand about Team Liquid is a lot of their moves, as far as I know, did come like old school style from the players. And so I don't actually get the sense personally that these players think there's anything wrong. Like, I mean, I already sort of revealed that the reason that Moses got fired was basically like a player mutiny from certain key players. I think at this point in time, the actual players that make up this team, in terms of the ones who have an opinion that matters, so it'd be like Elige, Stewie, maybe Fallen, I don't think they actually think this is in a bad spot. I think they like the players they play with. They like this group of players. Like, listen, mate, you have to understand, even though Fallen's all right now, he could get, I'm not joking, like, he could be half as good as he is now, and Stewie 2K wouldn't kick him from the team. Like, Stewie 2K is a star fucker for people who are way better than him and won more majors. Like, I'm not even saying that as a haterism, by the way. I'm just saying you'll see with people like Fallen, Cold, it's a certain generation just before his who were like the dominant players before he got to the top. He's just one of those people, even people like Nico are like this, where it's like, in a weird way, they over-respect people when they're not actually as good anymore. And so, unfortunately, I personally get the feeling Fallen could just stay in this team for fucking ever if he wants, mate. So, I don't hate it as a team. I just think that if you take aside everything your brain tells you about 2019 Team Liquid, and you look at this squad on paper, I look at this team, it's like, okay, Elige is a really good player. Naf's still pretty good. Wouldn't say he's like one of the best players in the world, but he's still a pretty good player. You know, he can definitely hang. Fallen's okay. The problem is when I say he's okay, who else is in the team? I personally think Grimm's actually, he's barely played on LAN, so I'll give him a little bit of time, but he hasn't been that crazy in Liquid. I thought he actually sort of like somewhat inhibited his game by going Liquid, so I think they maybe misuse him. Stewie's fine, does his job. The problem I have is I can't have Fallen and Stewie 2K in the same team at the same time, and then Stewie 2K is the IGL. Like, I don't know what the point of Fallen being there is.
It doesn't make sense.
Ahead.
And I don't know why they switched back. I don't know what results they were having.
Because that's probably the next excuse. Basically, another thing you can also do. People figured these things out years ago in terms of like coach and stuff. Like if you didn't have a coach back in the day, what you did is instead of kicking a player, you hire a coach because it implies, like, oh, give us time. Like, you know, this guy needs like 3 months. But really, it's just a way to not have to kick your mate who was going to get booted out of the team. Swapping IGL has become the new version of that because the joke of it is neither of us get kicked because we both need times to adjust to our roles, but it's an excuse period for the next, 3 months or whatever. And then you can always just switch back again, which is what they'll probably do again in Liquid, I imagine. So to me, if anything, that actually suggests that they don't know what the fuck they're doing, that they've made that swap sort of 2 times now. Because even though Moses, I know, actually did big up a whole bunch that like Stu 2K apparently was some like really good leader, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I'm somewhat skeptical that I haven't heard the comms, but he then, I can't remember what his reasoning was, but he had some like reason as to why Stewie then couldn't be the IGL. I can't remember if it's something like, it ruined his individual game or whatever the fuck. My problem is this. Is if Fallen's just an IGL and he's not just doing like what Nitro did, just some loose calls, then he's not doing that great a job as an IGL. And then as an actual AWPer, mate, am I the only one with an eye test? Like, all he's done is what every great player does. Like, they start out with a sponge that's all super wet. It's just putting it on the surface, dripping. By the end of your career, you're wringing that motherfucker like, and you're getting tiny drips. But when the drips come out, it gives you the flashback feeling like, oh, he's having an old classic Fallen performance. It's like, it's too little. It doesn't happen often enough. So to me, the problem with Liquid is, like, off the top of everyone's head, what would Liquid be right now? I'm going to guess, like, let's say, like, fucking 13th team in the world or something. Yeah, that's about what they probably should be. Yeah. If we're on LAN, maybe they should be the 10th best team. Yeah, but I don't really look at this and think they should be like a world beat or something,
Yeah, complexity is like 16, right? And like relative to complexity,
sounds fine as well. Yeah.
Oh boy, like they're pretty close, right? I mean, I don't know if that speaks volumes to how deep the top 20 goes, but that seems pretty devoid of context, right? Because like think about like Liquid should be a LAN monster, right? They should have came in and swept some of the teams that they played, right? But they haven't really done that, and they didn't look really convincing at all either. Like, I mean, speaking of the eye test, if you look at some of these players playing, like, it looks, it's so frustrating because they're making simple mistakes, right? Simple mistakes. I mean, these guys have been playing on EU FPL theoretically, right? Like these guys are supposed to be cutting their blades against a sharper whetstone, right? They should be even sharper than they were before, but it doesn't seem to have translated as well. My thought, honestly, I think, with EG being in kind of the shambles that they are and Liquid being in the shambles they are, honestly, I think there's a big shuffle that has a lot of potential. Now, granted, that also leaves a few players outside of that shuffle, but honestly, like, there's some good pieces from EG and there's some good pieces from Liquid that I think could make an actually decent team. Like, again, like, you're still rolling dice on this. Because I mean, like, who do you cut and who do you bring in? Because EG does, like, Cirque is. Oh no! Now that I think about it, oh boy, that is actually kind of dicey. But Breezy, he's sitting there. The poor guy. He's actually okay. Oh man, actually no, it's actually pretty rough over there too. Oh boy, is it just the NA mindset? Like, because I mean, it's really easy to see that the coming back to Faze, right? When you see Kerrigan lose a call that he's made that causes them to lose a round, right? You could see that dejection and then immediately reset. Okay, no, that's okay. We're getting back into it. And you could see in that group dynamic, like the actual reset that happens. It goes, okay, no, that's okay. We lost this. It was on my shoulders. Let's go into the next round, right? I don't think I'm seeing that I mean, maybe there's a bit of that on Fallen, but in some of the players, you can kind of tell like that buy-in isn't quite there in the same velocity that it used to be.
Did you say you ever follow League of Legends?
Zen, I think that was Zen.
I do. Yeah, of course.
No, I mean, do you ever follow League of Legends, Kris?
No idea. No.
Right, because basically in League of Legends, unfortunately, this topic has been talked to death on talk shows by me. So anyone who follows League of Legends will know this. But I'll give you like a little bit. Basically, the issue is, it does seem in League of Legends particularly, because obviously you've got these like two leagues, one in Europe, one in North America, where everyone's in one place, you're all in similar sort of circumstances, and there have been imports between the regions. Like there have been a bunch of European players who've gone to play in the LCS, whereas LEC, the European one, is basically just all the Europeans only, and you can sort of see the difference between keeping one, I won't say culture, because like there is no such thing as a pan-European culture, but just a more general trend of like the way people are, versus like obviously America has a very well-defined culture. It's the one they try to imprint upon everyone else in the world through media. Basically, the gist has become, and this is a pretty widespread observation that most people would probably agree with, the North American teams, it's not even that the players are like significantly worse. Like even in League of Legends, they aren't significantly worse. It's just less good players. But you know, you only need 2 or 3 good teams. You're already in business. You don't have to have your entire region be better. The problem is this. It's that the American players in general, the atmosphere within their teams tends to be like, there's a guy I know called LS who described it the best way. There's like some famous quote he was quoting where it said something like, they'd rather be ruined by praise than, I don't know, like offended by criticism or something. Some line like that. And basically what it means is, if you try to come in and be like a drill sergeant or tell people like, this isn't good enough, or you're not playing well, basically the American players tend to just basically, no joke, just get butt hurt. Sometimes won't even address it with the coach. They'll just privately sort of shit talk among each other, and they'll sort of just mutiny quietly and just get you kicked out the org. Like that's kind of the way it has seemed to have gone. And so really great European players in League of Legends who went over there degraded in skill and went downhill because they just sort of looked at their teammates and were like, shit, these guys don't even give a fuck. Like they don't have a winner's mindset. So what I would say is this. I do think, unfortunately, there is currently a clash between what is considered professional behavior in American culture and what it actually takes to be great at games. Because while you could get the rare person who somehow is like super driven and super like, you know, no bullshit, but at the same time has like incredible tact and charisma, that's obviously going to be like a fucking unicorn. You're very rarely ever going to get that. Whereas you're going to get lots and lots of people who are super like on point and know exactly what needs to be fixed, but unfortunately they don't have the tact, and they're just basically going to tell you straight to your face, this isn't good enough, this is maybe even shit, you've done this wrong, we're going to have to completely rehaul this. And guess what? That's going to hurt people's feelings, of course. Anytime you call people out, it's going to hurt their feelings. Even if you're right, by the way, that's probably the most misunderstood part about humans. I'll even admit it myself. Even if what they're saying is correct, it still hurts your feelings. You still think, oh shit, wow, they're calling me out for that. Fuck, I guess I do that, but it doesn't feel nice to be called out by someone else. The problem is this. If I try to think through different esports games, and so I don't just think League of Legends only, right? Well, one of the greatest ever leaders in esports from America is a guy in Dota 2 called PPD, who was basically like a support player, but who was the captain of the Evil Geniuses team in Dota 2. And he not only won TI, he won loads of tournaments, but he was a very successful player. And basically, the whole gist was, he was like a mastermind captain, an asshole, by the way, in a good and a bad sense. Like, he was an asshole, like, but he would also do stuff like, he would be like a mild hypocrite, and, you know, he'd tell you can't do something in the team, and then he would do it. And now listen, I'm sure his logic would be like, but I'm the captain and I know what I'm doing, and you're not. You know, there'd be some reasoning, but the behaviour that people might not fuck with. And here's the thing, there were times in his career where people didn't fuck with his behaviour who were North American players, and they wanted to push back, or they didn't want to be in his teams. But there's a reason why this guy, no joke, had way more success than anyone else from North America. And the problem is, when I try to go to Counter-Strike, this is where all the missing championships are, because I'm trying to think, where are the great leaders? Funnily enough, Stanislav might even himself have been one. Where are the people where like they're good as an IGL, but they're hard taskmasters, as it were? And I can't think of almost any for North America. Like, if anything, Team Liquid was actually probably the biggest exception ever. That, as far as I'm concerned, they're one of the best teams ever, and I think the IGL might have been the worst role in the entire team. And then I think to myself, who's everyone's favourite IGL from North America? Sean Gares, right? Was the reason either teams did fuck all, by the way, because he was the definition of someone who knows what he needs to do tactically, but won't fucking berate you all and be a drill sergeant, and will, no joke, just let people fuck up in his team and then just go, well, I mean, I can't make them do it, Thorin, and then they lose the tournament. Like, that is NA mindset in a nutshell, unfortunately. And that's why I don't like, as I alluded to, I don't like it when the players make the teams, because as we're alluding to here, the players already have like a fucking pussy-ass mindset. Like, they don't have a killer instinct, so what they're going to literally make choices to do, and you've seen this in teams like Evil Geniuses, like Team Liquid, is they're going to repeatedly make decisions that favour comfort over feeling uncomfortable. And that means you won't remove the right player, you'll remove a player that's the one who was arguing a lot, or a player that was a symptom of the disease, as it were. So unfortunately, I think all the NA teams are in a bad spot, and that's not including, obviously, like the fact there's no money in the scene and no one's fucking spending. Like, unfortunately, there is a mindset component to it, I think.
Yeah, there's a consistent, like, just a culture of protecting each other's feelings that prevents them from challenging each other, prevents them from being honest. And that's, I don't know if it's because of helicopter parenting in North America or what, or if kids just in general didn't hear things enough. Because I got told that I was a dumbass a lot, and I got smacked a lot. So I learned respect, and I started to learn boundaries, but I also knew that in order to do anything, I had to work hard. But it's like Americans want as much success with as little effort. And I'm not immune to that. I do that at work, but I get paid by the hour. So it's just, you have countries like Brazil, and the reason that they can be so rigorous and so good, and why Fallen was able to be successful, is because there is a culture of calling everybody out when they're making dumbass mistakes. They're not afraid to tell each other. They're honest. And the more we have of that, the better we'll do.
Yeah. And I mean, that's something that I'm a software developer. I've worked remotely for a few companies in the United States, right? It's very easy for me to do that. So, on both coasts, basically. And, the kind of common thread is that, when you don't have, when there are fundamental issues with, say, with a particular, if you have any particular issue, right, there's someone in the way of communicating the issue at hand, right? And when you say, well, I mean, because the idea is like, if you're a business, you have a goal-oriented mindset. I need thing done to get out of the way, right? And sometimes people are causing those issues, and you've got to actually approach those things. And sometimes it does cause conflict, and it causes long-lasting damage to relationships. However, there is a greater goal, kind of like Thorin was saying earlier. There's a greater goal of victory that we're trying to achieve here, and we need to overcome that conflict and maybe even damage some relationships in order to achieve greatness and in something in a way that we never ever could before, right? That is something that, as I've dealt with quite a bit in my professional career, like sometimes people aren't willing to have those conversations. Some people aren't, ready to approach, like maybe there is something that's a problem with myself or maybe one of my colleagues that could be inhibiting our performance and getting in the way of us doing exactly what we need to do. Right. And that if the problem never goes solved, you sit in limbo and do nothing, right? Like that's there's no way, that's no path to glory. Doing nothing is no path to glory.
I think part of the problem as well is it's about like the way that conversations are set up and the environment that you have the conversation, like what the sort of social etiquette is for it. Mm-hmm. Because like I would describe this as, because I have to just look at the lens that I've seen it happen through. I can't really chart where it first came from. But put it this way, as I've seen, like an obvious example would be like the rise of feminism and things like these percolate out into just mainstream culture, and every
spaces.
single discourse has basically become touched by this. One of the most important premises of that is the concept of tone policing, that it's not what the person's saying, it's that, oh, you seem like you're a bit upset with how you say that. Well, wow, why are you raising your voice when you say, like, by the way, I don't know if anyone knows this, but there are scenarios in which it is entirely appropriate to behave aggressively with someone. It's entirely appropriate to raise your voice with someone. It might be entirely appropriate to tell someone they are a fucking idiot who is literally inhibiting you and them from succeeding. Because one of the problems with having these discussions, right, is in an ideal world, this already happens by definition now in coaching. You might get the coach where, like I say, they have all the qualities of a winner, but they're also amazing at the like communication skills, or maybe they work, like, I'll give you an example. This guy in League of Legends called Papa Smithy, a lot of people might not know, he actually worked as like a child psychologist or something, you know, so he has like a background where he could have these conversations in a way other people can't. For other people, like, their skill set is something to do with the game. Like, they're a good in-game leader in Counter-Strike, they're a good League of Legends top laner. For them to solve a problem in the next 10 minutes, they can't take 1 hour to talk around everyone's feelings and every single detail that could upset someone. They need to go straight to the problem, like a fucking game of Operation, and go, there's the problem, look, there's a broken leg there. And unfortunately, at the moment in culture, if you do that, you're the bad guy, automatically, in American culture at least. There's a lot, by the way, it can't just be put on like feminism stuff. Just notice that sort of go hand in hand, because I will say as well, in my opinion, this is a classic, like, if you want to go with the world of politics, this is also a classic tactic of basically sort of like weak men, I would say. The kind of man who never could fight, where he has to make his whole shit about the idea that the first person to fight loses. And that's why you hear all these nonsense, oh, violence never solves anything. What are you talking about? If someone comes in your house with a gun and says, I'm about to kill all of you, is there any solution that doesn't involve violence at that point in the equation? That talk them down, like, come on, mate, we all know this is all nonsense, but we all accept these truisms. So part of the problem basically is no one wants to hear that people's feelings have to get hurt sometimes, or no one wants to hear probably this is basically my opinion, by the way, why like participation culture has actually ruined everything. You know what is supposed to happen, no joke, if you go and play basketball and the first 10 times you play basketball you're really bad and you fuck up the game and you keep dribbling the ball off your foot and missing, you're like literally supposed to be told by someone in that game, get the fuck out of this game, you are ruining it, you aren't good enough, go away, become good enough at basketball and you can play. And that is just the natural order of how the world works. But in the modern day, we're supposed to tell that fucking loser, who, by the way, is fucking up for 4 teammates, no, somehow it's okay that you're fucking it up. We have to somehow, in some sort of guilt-laden, like, fucked up trip, take that on ourselves. If we even feel bad about the fact you are objectively fucking the game up for ourselves, that's on us, and we have a lot of work to do. So you can all see how this just ends in some sort of fucking mad communist struggle session. So basically, to loop all the way back, the downside of this equation is this. We're not going to be able to fix this in esports, let alone Counter-Strike, because unfortunately it seems to me like it's more of like a society problem, and quite frankly, it's not one that we have any answers to. So for now, all I would say is this. I would just say, I would hope the NA owners of these teams actually get like sort of a grip on this. They haven't really done it, by the way. Unfortunately, I'm going to tell you in games like League of Legends where they have put more of their money, so it suggests they're probably a bit behind on this thinking, because there are solutions to it, but some of it's going to have to be the owner of these teams telling them, look, we're now bringing this next coach or this next player. You can't fucking kick him out because you don't like him telling you off, or you can't say he's driving to, like, I'm bringing these guys. Basically, if you play in my team, you're a guy I'm paying millions of dollars, potentially, if you're in a game like League of Legends at least, to be a top performer. Therefore, I expect a top performance. And I don't care at the end of it if you go, no, but we lost, but we're all good friends. And, you know, we all did get along. And no, that's irrelevant. You're fired. You didn't perform. It is a performance business, unfortunately.
And you know, this has happened to Team Liquid before. I don't mean to cut you off, Zach, but
no,
I was something I have in my head for the last 30 or 40 seconds. This has happened to Team Liquid before. Think of one of the highest jumps Team Liquid has ever made as a team when they brought in Simple. And what did Simple bring along with all of that success? A lot of internal tension, right? Now, you know, we can go on ad nauseum about whether that tension was beneficial or detrimental to the overall, you know, mental well-being of the relationships and all of that good stuff. But we cannot debate that when Simple joined the team and Simple took that team to a LAN called, I don't know, 2015 Columbus, maybe?
It's 2016, but yeah.
2016. Yeah, ring any bells, right? I mean, they went to the semifinals of a major, right? Like, we can see like that. Maybe there was some conflict out of there. Maybe that was beneficial. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe maybe we're maybe that's a red herring, right? But the idea is that Team Liquid's been down this road before, right? Maybe they can do it again. I don't know. Maybe
Here's the bad news for you. I've got some really bad news for you. There's a part of that story that if you'd added in, it would all make sense, mate. People won't know this, but literally, if you go back in time to 2015, one of my best friends of American players was the player Hiko, who played in Team Liquid at the time. And no joke, when he joined Team Liquid, because before that, his choice was this. He'd left Cloud9, and apparently they did like privately offer some mad shit, like they'd remake a whole Cloud9 with just him and he could kick everyone else. But at the time, he also thought like, that's kind of like a douchebag move. I'll just go to a different team, basically. So he left the others behind. He went off, and he had the choice of where he wanted to go. He could go, if you remember, he initially went to some shit team called Neelum, just because they paid him loads of money. But he had choices to go to CLG, who was just starting out, so they hadn't done anything yet, really. Or he had a choice to go to Team Liquid, if you remember, was the Dren team, so also was like, it was kind of like, it's a whatever, these are all okay teams. But any of these teams he joined would definitely be like a fucking fixer-upper. Like, it's not like him joining tomorrow would even A, make them as good as Cloud9 was, or B, get them anywhere close to the top. So when he even joined Team Liquid, one of the things me and him even talked about was like, literally, your first job has to be to one by one kick out all the people who don't belong here. And obviously the list was like Adren, Fogley, like the obvious names on the list. So one of the things I remember was we were trying to think for most of the first year he was on the team, like who could you even recruit though? Because at the time, if you remember, because they'd banned the iBuy power players, initially he was going to only go somewhere that Skadoodle went, because his logic was the only two good players right now is me, and I know I want to win, and Skadoodle's a bit of an airhead, but he at least knows how to shoot the orb, so if we're on the same team, that's the first two pieces, and from there you could build out a team. Now, unfortunately, just because they gave him like some nice signing bonus, he went and joined Cloud9, as people will know, and somewhat, that year he was good, but after that he sort of tanked his career. I don't think he gave a fuck after that, quite frankly. So basically, what Hiko had to do instead was literally rack his brain. Like, is there anyone good that would actually make the team way better? And when we looked, there was nobody in North America. I'm not even exaggerating. And fans on paper would say, like, just sign like JDM from CLG. It's like, that isn't a big enough move, though. That's like an okay move, but it's not going to put us over the top. And so literally, we started thinking of European players. And we were thinking, I'll give you an example. What about Oscar? There was one name that we were trying to think of. Maybe he was in, I've told this story before, he could have replaced Simple when he left, basically. But unfortunately, at the time, Oscar had already signed that deal with Mouse Spots that he would join like months later. Simple was one, obviously. And the whole reason to bring Simple in, it wasn't that we didn't know these problems existed. It's that I literally remember saying to Hiko, it's actually going to be a good thing that these problems exist. Because the best thing is, you won't even ever have to actually have the discussion, do we kick Adren? Like, there's no way Adren is going to be able to handle a month in a team with this motherfucker. And I've heard the practices. Like, he was tearing motherfuckers up. So the good thing is, like, not only will he literally give you a mad boost in the server, but basically, you'll sort of like burn off the dead wood. You'll quickly figure out who can't handle being here. Because, by the way, if they really can't handle it, they're not even going to have an argument. They're just going to break after like a month and a half. So the problem is, that's like the most extreme version of it. That's like basically the Counter-Strike equivalent of like Gordon Ramsay's kitchen nightmares. You bring in some guy who just tears the whole shit up, says he's doing everything. No, you don't really want to go that extreme. But I do think, unfortunately, you've got to actually start like basically your own culture within these teams, because the standard American culture we're talking about here, I would say it's almost anti-competitive.
Yep. There needs to be some sort of neutral third party that's not attached to the same emotions that helped put the team together or make the personnel decisions and stuff like that. And I don't know if that would be an extension of the GM role, but I feel like I don't know how many GMs are actually really close or care about the opinions of their players, but in order to make the best competitive team, they have to disregard the opinion of the players to a certain extent. Because if you hinge on that, we've already been down this road, you end up making bad decisions hanging on too long. So get somebody who has no emotional attachment to the team that can cut the strings easily.
It's like the sad thing is, I could actually somewhat do this all myself. Basically, if you just hired me as a consultant and get, I don't know, let's say like 10 hours, that's like say a month's worth, just, I'll make you a report. I'll tell you who you should kick. I'll tell you who's available. I'll tell you who I would potentially go with. Tell you what the main flaws of the team are. It's basically why I actually did a bunch of stuff last year. And obviously, people know I did the guild one, but I did a couple of people I worked with. And in all cases, almost every single one of these companies, this is the bad news. This is going to be depressing when I tell you this. They would all say, like, wow, I was so glad we did this consult. It was way better. But one thing I was confused by was, you're one of the only people who told us not to get these people. Because every other fucking person that you hire in esports, this is why it's not a real industry, they think to themselves in their brain, this is so mad, they think, well, this person is paying me to tell them what I think, so I better tell them that their ideas are good. Whereas my whole philosophy was the opposite. It's like, no, they brought me, I'm here to tell them whether their ideas are good. And in certain cases, their ideas were terrible, obviously, because it was people who don't know the space super closely. So I would have to tell them, for example, no, don't sign this team with fucking Mo and Adrenon or whatever. Like that, like those were good players years ago, mate. Like they're not good now. Like I know it says 2017, but in esports terms, that should be like 2007 for you, essentially. Like forget about them. That guy's done. So, mate, just steering people away from the potholes, it just made me realise like these orgs are in deep shit, man. They're not even on the level, as much as people make fun of morons on Reddit, even people on Reddit have a better grasp, no joke, on how good these players and teams are than a lot of the orgs do. They're just going off player opinion and whatever happened in the results, oh wow, he won a major, like, then they signed that fucking player.
Or how many times they punched the desk when they finished the match,
Like CS Moneyball is what we need.
Thing is, like, those teams, like, even like if I ask you now, okay, go make a team for US badminton, it's like, I don't know, I never watched badminton. Yeah, exactly. No, I'll go do it.
Yeah,
like you have to ask someone, and the first three guys, if they say the same thing, you just go do it. And the other thing that happens a lot in consultancies and people do this type of work, and that's basically my job, is many times you're asked just to say yes to what the company says, so that they can say, oh yeah, I've done this because McKinsey said this or BCG said this. So, it's not my fault. I have this recommendation and I've done it. So many companies use that just to wash their hands out of like
put it this way. Obviously, I won't spoil the info I gave some of these people, but a lot of these companies, when I would talk to them, essentially, here's what I would tell them. And by the way, this is aged so fucking well and probably will continue to be true for the next year. I basically told most of these companies, look, I'll go as specific as you want on your exact circumstances. You can tell me exactly how much salary you got, who you worked at, what you're thinking of. But essentially, because I'd obviously looked at the whole market, because I was trying to help all these Flashpoint orgs, and I knew all the buyouts of people, I knew all the salary. I told them, basically, there are two players right now in Counter-Strike that makes sense, and they go like this. One is you literally want to be a world #1 contender tomorrow, in which case there is no alternative. You must buy a top 5 ranked team today, and you are going to have to pay millions of dollars to do that, because you're going to have to pay all the buyouts, basically. Like, we're not building a squad, we're just buying a squad. And I can tell you tomorrow which one of these top 5 will still probably be top 5 in 6 months, and you'll have to pay the millions. So it might be 3 million, might be 5 million, might be 7 million, depends on which one you want. If you don't want to spend that much money, the only other option is you have to gamble that you can have a top 10 team. But since you're not giving me millions, the gamble is this. And by the way, this sort of tells you a lot about the way the Counter-Strike scene is. If you think of the players I'm about to mention, I told them this is the play. You go, because I already knew North was going to basically dissolve the org and or sell the parts, like they might just sell like MSL only or MSL and KGB or something. I told them what you do is the other option is this. If you're gambling that you're going to make a team, you've got to have some established parts and some new parts. So I told this is what you do. You go and you get MSL, tell them pick 2 teammates, probably would be like AZ and KGB if I had to guess, or AZ and Gade or something, who depends which ones he fucked with. And then you tell him, now go and pick the 2 players from FPL who are going to be your star players who haven't made it yet. We sign those guys. There's your budget version. The budget version is a gamble. The other one's not a gamble, but it costs millions. Now, you'll notice almost no one's done either of those options, which is why at the moment the CS scene's pretty stagnant. Or you have the scenario that's absurd like the CIS region, where realistically, if we made like a top 20 fucking CIS players, do even 3 play in Na'Vi? I don't know. Like, maybe not. Like, there might be 2. So, to me, like, that's part of the reason why the scene's a bit fucked at the moment is you have to have big balls to do the one where you buy the top squad, but if you trust the person, it'll work. Or you've got to gamble correctly. At the moment, people tend to go in between the two. They spend a couple of million, and they get an all right team, or they sign one player that's good, but they didn't sign, and then they just end up in the no man's land. Because if you notice, what I was trying to do in that scenario is either you spend big for guaranteed results, or you spend a little bit, but you try and min-max.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair too, it's like when you go and build a piecemeal team, right? Like everyone goes and looks and sees Henry G's ass pinned to the wall and go, oh God, I don't want to be that guy. But also you look at EG, who spent how many dollars on that team, and they go, oh God, they're fucking terrible now. Oh God, I think I'll hang out for a minute, and I can't blame him. It's rough.
I also don't think literally you can actually make piecemeal teams in terms of like guaranteed success. Like the Cloud9 project actually showed that, because as I said to people many times, the lineup of players he got, I think he got one player he actually wanted. Like all those other names were like, like fourth on the list for that role or whatever. Like, if people only knew, put it this way, the players that said no were way better than the ones that said yes. Like if you go look at the top 10 now, most of those teams have players that were on this fucking shortlist. It's brutal. But the problem is, because to some degree, like, listen, players don't control the transfers in the sense now that they obviously have no say over the buyouts. If it's too much, it's too much. But they still have say over where they go. That's the problem. Like the destination, no one at the moment does like the brutal NBA trades where they can just tell you on the trade deadline, like, oh, you didn't have any say, but we did trade you to the worst team in the league. Fuck you, bye. Like you can't. No one does that in Counter-Strike. But the problem is, no player who's like good. Think about it logically. It makes sense. Why, if I'm Nico, why the fuck would I join your team you're making tomorrow that's never done anything, and I still don't know who the other players are definitely going to be? I wouldn't. It doesn't matter if you tell me, but I'll make you the highest paid player in the world. Yeah, I'll be the highest paid player in the world on the 25th best team. Why am I going to do that? If you're someone like Nico or Cold Zero or the other big names he was talking to, you're going to a more sure thing, even if it's for less money.
And if you enjoyed that, Red Bull, I've got another one for you.
Yeah. By the way, most players also will just pick good teammates as well. The money's like the money has to be there as well, but they're not going to pick only for money. I know fans are wrong on that one. Like fans think really that like Fallen would sign a deal for like the worst team ever for 5 million. He wouldn't. He really wouldn't, guys. He would just sign with like the second best offer. That's like an half decent team.
Yeah. So if you like that red pill, I've got another red pill for you. Every player is looking at the team and they go Cloud9. Fucking Cloud9. Why would I join Cloud9? But every org is going Cloud9. They've got megabucks. I'm going to need all the money. Like, there's no deals here. There's no negotiation.
Oh yeah, there's also,
you got the money, baby.
By the way, that was also probably the stupidest part about the way they did that project. Remember, you have to at all times when you remember Cloud9, remember these two details I revealed. One, they could have signed the entire Astralis team, or two, they could have made the Nico Cold Zero based Hunter Balkan super team. So they chose no to all of those, and then when everyone in the whole industry knew they have to have a team for Flashpoint 2, they then began negotiations for these players. And so as you're saying, they basically got the same treatment that Hollywood gets when Hollywood goes and rents something, where the same trailer that I could rent from someone else for 20k is 50k because you're from Hollywood. Like, that's just the way it works there. So they basically fucked themselves. Like, I have zero sympathy for them for losing their money on that project. They did it all to themselves.
Yeah, and all that money they had to spend, that's coming at the cost of the runway they have, right? Like they raised so much money to pay for this team. So every dollar you spend on buyout is a dollar you can't spend on salary later to buy them more time or to make the next move you need to make. Like, oh my good Lord. Like, oh yeah. It's rough. That whole team was rough. And again, so like seeing that pinned up against the wall, when you're trying to build a team, it's like, oh, that's incredibly ominous.
Someone else pick a topic then. What are we switching to now?
When we were bringing up taking Simple into Liquid, it made me think about basically kind of the talent drought that we had that I think kind of led to Rank S, that led to Face It and stuff like that. Seeing as we are in a pending / already in a serious NA talent drought again, what do you think? How could we get out of that? Are we doing enough as far as encouraging people to go and try and compete? Do we just not have good enough stock? Like, I'm interested to hear people's thoughts.
Problem with that is, like, basically, you're right, there's a talent drought now, but that's just because talent is leaving and going to another game, unfortunately. I don't actually think before that there ever really was one. In fact, Richard even made a point on it not that long ago by the numbers, I think he was correct about, which is an element that it's dark, but it's true. An element of the iBuy bans that plebs don't understand is, in a sense, that was terrible for NA because it took the established players who might conceivably have won a major out of the pool. What it also did is literally allow the players who since then have had the chances to win majors and did win majors to play in the top level. Like, I'm not exaggerating. Those two teams, Cloud9 and iBuyPower, were the gatekeepers keeping out the people who came up in CLG and Team Look at all those teams. They were keeping those motherfuckers out of tier 1. Because back then especially, and this is the ultimate loser American mindset, and I'll tell you straight up, it's where you go like this. You know what? Yeah, I might be a big fish in a small pond, but as long as I keep this pond nice and small, I'll always be the big fish. That is the ultimate loser mindset, but these guys all had it. Like, you have to realise, Dazed, Sean Gers, all these guys were telling me every LAN, oh, there's no one to practice against, it's just trash, we can only practice against each other and there's no one else. Meanwhile, they were literally, I'm not joking, like 3 months, 6 months from all these teams coming along who became just as good as them, or better. So, in a way, it's like the whole necessity is the mother of invention. You never know. Sometimes the talent drop might be better. Like, for example, maybe now some team comes up in NA who all just stick together and they're all really good and they just don't go and tear each other apart over stupid moves that you do when you have all the options in the world, like you do in the Danish scene, etc. Maybe it's more like the old school polls and you have to just keep those 5 together. But as a result, your team play gets fucking amazing and then you go through the hard times instead of cutting people. It could work both ways. On the whole thing that you were doing of like, the society element of like, but how do we encourage? I personally don't think that's actually real, mate. As in, there's not a human in this world who was going to be the next Simple, who was like, oh, I was going to be the next Simple, but no one encouraged me to play those, so I didn't bother. Like, that, I don't think that exists. Like, maybe it does like generations down the line to some degree, but I'd never worry about that really. Like, I don't personally believe, this might sound controversial, I don't believe in the funnel approach to talent, which goes like, if you just get a big enough funnel, then eventually at the end, yada, 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 question mark, question mark, question mark, you get 3 simples. It's like you don't get any simples. The simples are the fucking outliers, mate. What you get if you have a big, big funnel is you get some naffs and some Elisias and you get some twists. You get some pretty good players. You get some really good talent. So you need a big funnel to get enough of those. But if you want to talk about the people who are actually like changing the world, they come along regardless. They come along if you've got 10 people in the scene or if you've got 50 million, you know.
Yeah, to be fair, if there was a player on one of the teams that are playing out in North America right now that was absolutely with consistency destroying everyone in the server, yeah, they may actually make it up to Team Liquid, right? But I mean, even if there was that player, that I may be eating words right now, there may be a player that's absolutely tearing up tier 2 North American Counter-Strike. I have no idea because we just can't be bothered to watch it, I'll be honest.
I mean, technically, as far as I know, isn't that basically, I know Grim was that player before, but isn't that even what supposedly the junior guy was? Didn't these guys sort of just take turns to be the guy who was like dominating tier 2? Because at the time, that's all NA had, and then they basically got signed to these teams. The problem to me is the same in NA that it always was. There has never been a talent lack. The lack is is that Americans refuse to understand the roles in Counter-Strike, and so you have like 2 fucking roles, and that's you're basically just a country that produces all the attacking midfielders and strikers, and you've got 0 fucking defenders and goalkeepers, and then you wonder, why does my team with 11 attacking midfielders not win? It's because that's never been like football. So in the same context, in Counter-Strike, surely everyone can see this to this day. Counter-Strike has never been about having the most skilled players in the server. It's just never been about that. Like, if anything, I find it amazing when the Faze teams of the past did succeed. Like, actually, that was like, how did you even do that? That shouldn't even be possible. So to me, it was always more about, like, you want to have the right pieces for the different roles. So to me, that's where NA has always fallen down. Like, I even feel like the people who could play those roles, this is how you see the problem with mentality. They just get kicked to the curb. So when some fucker like Jdubs comes along, or I even thought to some degree, I know it's a bit of an old school shout, even Fogley at one point in time was decent at the job when he was in an RG doing it. But they will always, in America, they will always replace these players with somebody who frags better from that position. It doesn't matter if the position there is good. Just always replace them with a better fragger. Which is how, by the way, this is an indictment, that you end up with Stewie 2K as your IGL over and over again. That's how you end up with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no real homegrown basis of in-game leaders either. There's no, like, where did Daps go? Daps went right back to EG. He's a coach now. He's not even in tier 2 where he's like going to bring up some of these potential teams or look for new potential talent that are out there on the field, to bring them up to Liquid and EG potentially, right? And then on the other side of that, you've got Liquid and EG that they're not in any hurry to make any kind of roster moves because in their brains everything is just a-okay, peachy keen, right? Going out 9th to 12th in a major land. Oh boy, we're only getting paid to be in EU to make it to this major land. But hey, you know what? It is what it is, right? So they're not even willing to make the hard cuts to, kind of say, hey, let's scrap some major pieces and bring some new pieces in, see what the hell, right? But another side of that same blade of, hey, look, we're in EU now is they have a lot of investment in this. They brought these players over. Maybe they can even come back. I don't even know with the flight situation of COVID, if they can even come back, maybe they can. Boy, that would be kind of dicey to sort out, right? Ooh. So, I mean, do you grab someone from EU and potentially, even make a piece fit in, but then you've got a cultural piece that may work out? Are you even in an NA org? Is that going to make your sponsorships that much harder to sign? Because a lot of people in the industry know a lot of the money that comes from sponsorships and marketing are North American based, and they want to target North American demographics, right? Because that's where a lot of money and investment goes towards. So, I mean, is that going to make that even harder to sell sponsorships to, right? Ooh, that's a. I don't know that as an org, I want to stare down the barrel of that, or if the players are even willing to make a risk like that. Eesh.
Anyone else got any thoughts?
I mean, yeah, I'm also on the more pessimistic side. I mean, well, there's Valorant, there's the less money around. I think the LERP money thing is quite important because on the last podcast you had with him, he was basically saying that, yeah, I'm IBR even with this. I mean, he obviously didn't say these shitty players, but he said, we don't have the GOAT lineup. We have these guys, and we still get like more or less the same sponsors and
they're basically the same.
Eyeballs. Yeah,
everything the same. The business, yeah.
So in terms of competitive, I don't see anything good coming out of it. And the other thing is, actually, Veteran made this point on that LPL podcast that Bev with the boys, which is like, if you're a teenager now in the States, like, okay, if your alternative is to go to uni, but actually going to uni costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, like you're facing bad choices. Whereas if you're in Denmark, first, if you out of a job, you can get like 2 years of paid like time off. The state just pays for you.
Right, unemployment or whatever.
Yeah. Uni is free, or they even pay you to go to uni. So It's like, if you're a young guy now, you're maybe playing consoles or you're maybe playing Valorant, but there's not as many people playing CS. So for all these things, I'm not too optimistic about NAM's future. On the other hand, they do have most of the money in sponsors, so if things came back, they could come back as well.
Put it this way, for exactly the reason you just said, I also don't shed one fucking tear for any of these guys. Like, think about what a complex, because in League of Legends they do that all the time. Like, players aren't, we have all the money, more money than God, but players aren't as good. We'll fucking do something with the money then. Think what a mad resource you've got there. Like, for example, one of the things I would do in this whole discussion we're having here is use the money to solve that problem. Make a massive coaching staff with all brilliant people who can cover all the different areas you need to, and bring people in to coach them and culture and mentality, and send them all on courses where you go and do I wouldn't necessarily go this far, but I'd maybe even have them do fucking training where it's like you do almost like physical activities that are mentally challenging to show that we're not just going to fucking talk about comfort here in our team. That's why I say, unfortunately, you have to sort of break the whole culture and start anew, which is hard to do. Not least because, by the way, some of the people in these orgs probably have to break their own cultural ties.
Hey, maybe that's a perfect fit for Mr. Casper Vitt. Come on in, Mr. Handball.
Who knows? In theory, maybe it would even work, mate.
Yeah, it could actually work, right? Because I mean, like, we have a pretty positive association with people coming in and taking charge and getting things working. But I don't know that it's so hard for It took Simple, probably one of the greatest players to ever take Counter-Strike, to break a North American org to actually make consistent success, right? I don't know if one man could do it alone, right?
I think the closest to a successful approach of what Thorin was talking about, as far as like extending to coaches for every aspect and stuff like that, what Astralis was doing, it started with the sports psychologist, but then it was just like they were running as close to what I would say a fully like a AAA team in the United States, like NFL or MLB. And very clearly, that helped to make them the greatest team in the world. And one of the greatest that's ever been, if not the. So it goes with not wanting to spend money to make money, except obviously spend money to make wins, and that doesn't necessarily translate to money for them. So it's hard for them to justify. But I would love to see that, an approach like that with a org in the United States.
I mean, to be fair, Cloud9 have already done it. They've already had European players. They've had all cluster of European players and still remained in a North American org with North American sponsors. It's not like it's financially impractical, right? To just have a European division of your North American organization and still have some kind of semblance of money. But the idea is that you've got all of this dry powder and you're like, well, nah, I guess I'll just grip it and, wait for the next, franchise lead to come out that will just gladly accept them. Maybe they're pinching their pennies, waiting for Riot to unveil their franchise league in Valorant, right? Like maybe that's what they're pinching their pennies for. I don't know. Who knows?
I just don't get the impression that they want to make something legendary.
I mean, obviously not. They would have spent the money yesterday. Like Cloud9
Exactly.
would have raised another round and been like, "Hey, look, we're playing all these super epic close games. Like we're taking some of the best teams in the world to the ropes. Like we can buy some more runway." And then they didn't think so. So whether that's that's their particular prerogative of whether that met exactly what they were looking for. I suppose it didn't.
Let's do another topic switch. Who's got another one? You got one, Zen?
Yeah, it's a bit more theoretical, so just take
Let's
it
do it.
whatever you want to do. So basically, if you were advising an org now, what type of coach would you bring in? And this is prompted for a bunch of the ones were mentioned, like the Adran, not Adran,
Zonic?
the guy
What
that
do you mean?
Well, first the Moses one, the EG one, and also on League of Legends. For me, the two most insane ones are Soaz becoming a coach, and now Dardoch also going to help coach the two most uncoachable people of all time. So orgs probably they don't know what they're doing, but also it's not obvious what would work. Like for me, I think Moses would be a slam dunk, and apparently it didn't work. I don't know, maybe he did a good job, but in practicality, they ended up having him leave. So what would be what would be your advice to orgs when looking for a coach now?
I mean, I'll tell you straight up, I told all of them basically, here's your shortlist. And good news for you, these are the 3 best coaches ever in CSGO. See if you can get any of them. And I told them you get them either for coach or for general manager, because all of them in theory were open to it. The list goes like this, in no particular order. Zonic, Zeus, Kassad. There's the 3 names.
Yeah.
They're the only 3 people where if you look at their track record, it would be they would have to be the luckiest person of all time to get the success they had if they weren't actually good at their job. Just the track record of all 3. Let's do the quick rundown. Sonic obviously has all the success with Astralis. Even so, you changed a couple of players in and out. You changed IGLs. You still had a lot of success. Okay, there's one. Then you go with Kassad. Right, his equation wasn't as much top level success because you were never working with top level teams. But you look at where the teams were when he got them, he took pretty much all of them to a much higher level. In the case of Renegades, they were legitimately in the top 8 of majors, actually mixing it up. Then lastly, you've got Zeus. I think Zeus might have the most underrated resume in the history of fucking Counter-Strike. I mean, the guy not only has 2 majors, then he took Team Liquid squad to a bunch of finals before they had the lineup with NAF, etc. Then when they got the lineup with NAF as well, then he was taking them to number 2 in the entire world. This guy's track record's mental. Even when he rejoined Evil Geniuses, they immediately became the number 1 NA team again and won a bunch of tournaments. Like, this guy's fucking unreal. Basically, the only team he hasn't had success with is returning to the MIBR squad. So, and if anything, by the way, I think they've got their own fucking problems there. So, to me, these are the 3 most obvious people. If you get any of these 3 people, they're game changers, they build the culture. Like, I even think, by the way, when you look back now, how ominous does it become that one of the first things to happen in Cloud9 was just releasing Kassad straight up and it being all along the lines of like, I don't feel like I can have any impact here. The IGL has a different philosophy to me. That was actually a very ominous fucking sign now you look back.
That's an indictment of the team entirely.
So, I mean, to me, these 3 people, I think they're just the 3 most obvious ones you hire. Like, I don't think great coaching's like thick on the ground here, guys. So when you find some that are, in my opinion, they're worth their weight in gold. You just pay their mega bucks. The real problem, I think, with the whole Cloud9 from that perspective was that, like, if you were going to bring in Kassad, he almost should have been in Henry G's position. To bring in him and Henry G was like, then you'd literally have two different philosophies potentially, you know?
Yeah, and you think about like some of these coaches that you mentioned, like some of them have like huge tenures going back, almost a decade, right? Like these guys have done coaching where before coaching was basically being a GM and also talking to the players while they're in the server, right? Like these are people who are like booking the players' plane tickets and hotel rooms to like get them to the land they need to go to next week, and and then also basically being the final authority on, hey, we want to make a roster move. Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Let's do that. I'll actually make the call with the player and do all of these things, right? So it was pretty interesting to me whenever Kassad was going to make a great coach, but it was interesting that he also has Henry G there doing GM role as well. Yeah, but I mean, going back on to Zeus, right? I mean, people forget how really, really good Team Liquid was before they went on the era that took them to the Grand Slam. They had unbelievable consistency in both that they beat every team super strong. Getting double digits on a map against Team Liquid was such a rarity that it was more of a rarity that they beat Astralis, right? Like they lost on double digits more than they got beat by Astralis, right? And Zeus was a big part of that, and also Taco, was also part of that team. But Zeus was a huge part of that, and of course, as soon as Adrin comes in, they go into autopilot, just blow everyone out of the water, and go win the Grand Slam, right? Like. So Zeus has a huge tenure going back down with MIBR's, the former MIBR core. I don't know what we call that core anymore. But going back to when they came over to America, huge leadership experience. That not only are you getting a coach, you're getting someone with all of that, basically take a team over and bring them up to the foreground of top of tier 2 or below of tier 1, and that's huge. That's so much to ask of anybody, much less a coach, right?
Like, notice then, you can confirm this if you listen to any of my content. I never at any point told people Yanko, Moses, or Henry will all be amazing at their jobs. Never, ever, ever said that. Because the problem is, until someone, there's only one metric in the world I care about. It's called competence. Until you show competence, I don't give a fuck how nice you are. I don't give a fuck how good. Like, for example, why would being competent at being a commentator make you an awesome general manager? It wouldn't. Now, I can say he has qualities of a potential general manager, but that's very different from doing it. And I also think as well, these people, like he's saying here, they have the tenure. They've done it. I don't need to speculate. What would Kassad be like if he could? He did it already. He did it with a whole bunch of teams. The difference is, even if you take like my favourite people, I'll give you an example. If I have to pick the best analyst now, probably Sponge, right? Even though he doesn't technically do the role anymore. It's probably Sponge, right? But would Sponge be a great general manager? I have no fucking clue whatsoever. He wasn't a very good in-game leader. I imagine he would probably have his own. Because another factor, by the way, when you bring these people in as coach or general managers that fans aren't thinking of, is you have to ask what dynamic do they have with players. Like some of these people, I'm sorry, they would do this. Some of them would just kiss the player's ass, or they just wouldn't be, they would almost think like, I'm here to help him. Like they would never think he's the boss of the player. So you've also got to be cut from like a very special cloth, in my opinion, to be like a leader of men in that regard. So that's why my shortlist is small, but it's all there. Like put it this way, one of the areas I knew quite early on, I'm probably in deep shit with this Flashpoint stuff, is early on I identified most teams in Flashpoint didn't have a very good coach, and most either had no GM at all or some guy who wasn't from Counter-Strike or didn't know the space. So one of the first things I told all the orgs within Astralis, within Flashpoint, is I already knew Astralis potentially were willing to sell the whole team. So I told them all, look, even if you don't want to sign players, all of you need an upgraded coach or general manager. So why don't you just go to Zonic and give him a blank check and tell him just join my org? Like I even said, if you're smart, you do it like the Jason Lake approach. You make it seem like it's going to be a big long-term project. You come in and you say, look, I'm headhunting you specifically. I've loved all the things you've done here. I know you've got a family in Denmark, so don't worry, you don't have to move to America or anything. You stay over here, you run the whole project. Let's make this long-term. I want you here for 10 years. You're going to be like a true sports general manager. You'll go through different versions of the team. The idea is you give him a bid that isn't just like, here's your Astralis offer plus a bit bit more money. You give them like a reason to want to leave. And I also knew the problems the Astralis org was having, like, as in the people inside that org fucking hate them. So, like, the idea that none of these orgs even attempted to pull the triggers, like, give me a break. Like, put it this way, if you guys, I wish I almost like had the logs. Like, obviously wouldn't release them, but like it was outrageous. I would tell people stuff like, why don't you try and get someone like Zonic? Oh, would he want to join? Like, I would say, why the fuck would I know? You're the general manager. Why you say that to me? Like, as though I've gone. I'm not just recommending this guy to you. I've gone and had a whole conversation with him and done your job for you and convinced him to join you. What the fuck are you talking about? That's why every conversation in Flashbot went like this. I would initially try to do it through the correct means. I would go to their person, their general manager. I would say, look, you need to upgrade these positions. The next call would always be, now I need to talk to the owner of this org, right? The owner of this org, your general manager's a fucking incompetent arsehole from Overwatch. He doesn't know anything about the space. He's fucking it up. He's not going to do anything. And then half the time they would just go, oh, thanks for the feedback. And then just immediately like essentially recycle bin that in their brain and just do nothing whatsoever. So sadly, even if you could, even if you could literally tell these people who to sign, they won't sign the right people, unfortunately. They've also got their own metrics, and they're not metrics I know. Like, for example, one of the weirdest ones of all is you wouldn't believe how many of these people, no joke, it's like a lot of the NA owners want to have a call with you, and on the call, they just almost want it to be like you're having a beer with them in a bar, and you have to align on certain key vision points or whatever. And then if you do that, I'm not joking, that's probably like 80% of getting in the team right there. If you, like, basically, if you can sell this guy the right line of horse shit that makes it sound like you all believe in the same core values and all that, but you'll just be in the door, mate. That's why they all end up with all these incompetent fucks in these positions just occupying space.
It's funny too, because you just because again, I've worked with a few North American corporations and companies. That's exactly right. Because a lot of the CEOs that are coming up and have access to VC money are they're like in their mid 30s, mid 40s, right? These are like think of like the typical fraternity, right? Fraternities were huge when they were in college, right? I mean, this is like a pretty similar thing, with just a new modern, new age twist. And it's funny too, because these calls, you're right. If you can sync up, if you can get on the same page as far as fundamentally like on a language level, on like an idea level, and if you're a yes man, yeah, you can basically get into a strangely large number of situations where you basically have no business being in. Now, the cool thing is okay, that's the puzzle. Now, how do we solve it? Right. The cool thing is I like to think that I'm using that as a power for good. Right. It's like, okay, I know that this is what you want, but I know it's actually really good for what we're trying to do here. Right. Because a lot of that comes into the packaging of how you present an idea of, how do I get you to say yes to the idea that I need you to have in your brain right now, right? And oh man, yeah, that commentary, like, yeah, hit really close to home. And so I mean, and how do we use that for good? Now how we can see how that's being used for evil, right? Some people who are doing GM roles have kind of no idea really what they're doing, but they're on the same page. Like they have the CEO is trusting this person who has presented themselves as a domain area expert and can be tricked and maybe sometimes even do misleading things without knowing.
Here's a really dark tangent that literally is what you're talking about. It ties back into what I said about the team culture. By definition, the worse the problem and the environment gets, the more extreme the person coming in diagnosing it's going to seem, but therefore the environment necessitates you will never allow that person in because you don't allow people in who are overly critical. So basically, like what you're saying, put it this way, basically is my experience at Flashpoint. It would go like this. I would basically tell these orgs the problems they were having, and then the joke is, the second I left the room, they'd all like be like, I propose that we ban Thorin from these meetings. Like that was their solution. Their solution wasn't like address the problems. It was like, right, well, the uncomfortable thing is this fucking guy keeps us we're all fucking it up. Yeah, that was almost like I was like trapped in some sort of mad fucking like, Kafka scenario or something. Like you had no idea what was going on. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
The worst negative feedback loop.
I think a lot of those orgs are like that.
And are least likely to.
Nearly all those orgs are like that. It's why in League of Legends, the game where they actually have like unlimited money effectively, but they're no clue how to use it, they're just spinning their wheels, mate. They're having stupid conversations about like, oh, maybe we need to develop more talent. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, it's how you use the people you got now. Like, it's not so, like, all you've done there is you've taken your current problem and you've time shifted it 10 years in the future. Like, that just sounds like an excuse,
And if you think about it too, that layer goes up another level too, right? The person that you're talking to got investment money from someone that they convinced that they were a subject domain matter.
Oh, it's all a chain of con men, yeah, essentially. By the way, not always like explicit con men. Like obviously some of these people that's just how good they are, and they're just doing a great job of marketing. But no, essentially, like the amount of competence in the esports industry is incredibly low, mate.
Oh yeah, and in the software industry too, because and I mean the big sign is like the more buzzwords you hear, the less the person that is saying them is either doesn't know about the subject that they're talking about, or has been told, oh yeah, these are buzzwords, it'll get everybody going, yeah, it'll be great, which is basically like whatever you're saying is, oh yeah, we just get everyone on the same page, and we're gonna do whatever the hell we want anyways, right? Yeah, which I mean, unfortunately, the thing is at the end of the day, somewhere down the line, somebody's got to sign a check. Somebody's got to, hire a player, bring on a roster, bring on a coach. But at the end of the day, too, it's the people who are signing the checks, the people who are making the roster moves, are the most important part of that chain. And right now it's probably general managers. And you can also see why a lot of players end up making roster moves, even though they may not be directly the cause of it. They have to eventually go to the general manager and say, hey, we want to get this guy. Can you give him a call or see what the fuck? And eventually that may or may not happen. And it totally makes sense because they're probably way more domain level experts than the GM is, right? GM goes, oh yes, the buyout makes financial sense. Let's do it, or it doesn't. Find someone else, please. Yeah, nightmare.
Do we have one more topic?
I have a very short one. I don't know if you have an opinion on this, but the NBK going to Valorant, because like you say, it's hilarious that the top players in Valorant is like Scream and some like tier 3 NAM guys.
Some of them are even less famous than that, which is the saddest part, isn't it? I know.
Exactly.
Failed NA players. Let's all be honest.
Yes. So my question is like, I would expect NBK to just basically become the #1 player. Like, is that your expectation? Do you think that's possible? Do you think that's the expectation?
The problem with that is like, look, like that's pushing the boat out too far. Like, it's not like he's mechanically going to be twice as good as everyone else just because he's like from CS. Like, I would imagine he'll probably even play. I mean, at the moment, by the way, sadly, it sounds like he's just streaming. I don't even know if he wants to be a pro. But even if he wanted to be a pro, I imagine he would take up some element of a supportive role in the team. That just seems to be where he's at in his career. The problem with Valorant isn't the idea that it's not a good game. It's just that, like, as you say, some of the names that have made it to the top, it's like these were nobodies. Like they didn't show skill in Counter-Strike like some of these players. Like if anything, Scream makes sense. He always had mechanical skill. It just was a bit of a fuck up at the end. So I would say if I look at who's in the top teams, logically, yeah, he should be in one. Like if you look at all the top teams in Valorant, pretty much, they're nearly all people who were like good in CS. And it's almost like there's almost even like a cynical correlation. Like there's a lot of people where like it makes sense as to how good they are in Valorant, it seems, in the scene based on how good they were in CS at the end. So I would say he'll be a top player. It's not like he's going to instantly be like the fucking best player or whatever. Like even the players that have taken that role up, they all tended to be people who, if they didn't make it in CS, it's like they were too young or they'd only played for a year or something. They all tended to still be like mechanically very strong players as far as I can tell, the best players.
Okay.
But I will say, yeah, if I see that, like, it's Shazam versus Bolster, it's like, I don't give a fuck then, mate. Why would I care?
I just think that Valorant, like, it's the mechanical skill that CSGO players bring to Valorant acts as a great kind of buffer for their bottom line of performance. But there is entirely too much going on with the abilities and countering everybody and kind of understanding what's going on, and too much RNG just because of, I shouldn't say RNG necessarily, but too many things that get thrown into your wheels to really say that it's a given that he's going to even perform well, per se, because we know he has the mechanical, but I mean, the dynamic of Valorant, it's a lot more to consider, I think, than CSGO. That doesn't make it harder. That doesn't make it better. It's just
I mean, I don't think he would switch officially, let's say, if he wasn't already feeling it good. And I'm pretty sure all these pros played like a bit of League of Legends at some point. Which is basically, you have these abilities, you have this ultimate. It's not like, oh, I've never seen this, or at least Dota. 10 years ago, I'm like 99% sure that NBK played Dota 10 years ago, like everyone did. So it's not. I don't think
it's not out of their ability.
Fresh. Yeah. But it's a good point.
Yeah, just to kind of jump on that, it's interesting to see the kind of players that are doing well. It's interesting that they tend to be some of the more individualistically, stylistic, players that were almost kind of known for not having as much team play. I don't know if that's now okay.
They just play duelists in their king.
Yeah. And this is like somewhere where it's like, I don't know if this is like, I have no idea if I know what I'm talking about on Valorant. But again, it's just from the observations, right? And understanding of how the abilities play into the effects of the game. Because, as much as Riot wants to sell you that, oh, yeah, no, these abilities don't really affect the skill level of the. No, bullshit. No, they absolutely do. Like, these abilities affect directly your ability to get kills in the server, right? And they make a huge impact because, think about this. You aren't necessarily as dependent on your teammates to do the things in the game to set you up to get the kill. A character has the ability to do that just as much as the person you're trying to shoot has the ability to do that. So, it seems to me that these individualistically styled players tend to be thriving because they can use the abilities themselves to do the things that they need in the server. And they aren't depending on some guy who just doesn't know anything about Counter-Strike or how to take an effective duel or how to scan through a site to go and take the right fight or trade effectively. Right. It does seem like it is very strange how these players are doing particularly well as far as like getting kills on the server than people who are like, think about I think about Twists, who has been doing pretty well recently. He's not the first guy in. He's not throwing all of his own flashes. He has an entry guy that's in front of him. He has somebody behind him who is throwing utility to help him take effective fights. He has somebody ahead of him who is able to spot the correct player that he needs to shoot at that very moment so he can get an advantageous duel. Like, he has a lot of things that his teammates are providing for him to do an effective job. Whereas in Valorant, you have abilities that your teammates don't even have, right? You have movement abilities that your teammates don't have. Maybe the guy you're trying to shoot does, right? But I mean, like, you have the onus is on you. You're the superhero, if you will, and maybe that's why it's such a wonderful North American game. Because we have such a wonderful hero complex.
I think you're right. My personal
theory, of course,
experience is basically I play mostly casually, so I'm not tryharding, but the abilities allow me to hold W and still manage the consequence. And so I don't like having to worry about my team. So on T, I'm lurking. On CT, I would like to basically be alone. But playing Reyna per se, or Jet, like you said, with the mobility and the stuff like that, it makes it more impactful for you to be able to use your brain to think and position yourself with the use of those abilities and make up for, some kind of frankly dumbass decision making that, they probably never developed because they never played CSGO for a very long time, or the cause and correlation could be backwards on that.
Yeah. And again, it's your brain. You're not like depending on your teammate to throw it's not that team play can't help you do better, right? Like, there's
you can
obviously
have team comps
effects
that can flash themselves entirely, and you don't have to worry about that aspect.
100%. So it's no surprise to me that like individuals that are not necessarily that have historically in Counter-Strike been problematic in team play environments are doing well in Valorant is, I'm not surprised by that fact.
I think the part people actually probably misunderstood about Valorant as a game is this is what's funny is I remember when I first saw it as a game, I was like, what does this got to do with Counter-Strike? Why would this be a competitive Counter-Strike? If anything, this is a competitive Overwatch. Because to me, I actually am more interested in what will happen over the next few years as Overwatch starts to wind down. Because to me, it's logical that the best players in Overwatch, they're a shoo-in to be amazing at Valorant. Again, it's a game that's not just like hit scan weapons, but it's also about how to use the abilities, how does a team comp work, how do different like these are all alien concepts to Counter-Strike. It's the same character in Counter-Strike. Everyone has the same character. So to me, like the raw skill of, like, put it this way, to me, being a Counter-Strike player and trying to make it in Valorant is like being a really fast sprinter and trying to make it in the NFL. Like, it sort of is part of being a wide receiver, but it isn't exactly. And, you know, there's plenty of people who aren't that fast who might be amazing at that role and get it done anyway. So I think it's like, it's only a loose connection. To me, if anything, the reason why MBK would probably be good at Valorant is he's a very intelligent Counter-Strike player and a very good mind for the game. Played every role, so again, he would just be someone who could sort of fit in wherever he wanted. I even think if you look in Valorant itself, motherfuckers like Happy and Existence as all in-game leaders are in the game. So there's even like an obvious in if he wants to go to almost any top team, because there's another factor that people haven't thought through, is not just in NA, because at the end of the day, even the top European players, because they were tier 3 Counter-Strike players, they kiss the ground. Someone like MBK walks on, mate. They would beg someone like that to join their team. So I also think if he wants to, there is an option to do this. I would just say this. The fact that he in no way intimated he wants to be a pro Valorant player suggests to me I don't think he even did this because of that reason. I think he just did it because he had 0 offers in Counter-Strike. I don't think... people think I'm using hyperbole. People like Flusher, the fucking Hyenas players, the Guardian, they're getting 0 offers. This is like Plano all over again. They're getting nothing. Like that. It's not that they're getting bad offers. It's not that they're getting an offer that isn't enough. They're getting 0 interest. Nobody in the entire world of esports wants these people. Yeah. And the problem is, some of them would be wanted at like lower levels, or if like as I say, if they started playing again and just sort of like gave 2 months where they showed they gave a fuck, some of them would very quickly be back on the menu. But a lot of them still think this is 2019, and if they just wait, that, you know, eventually the name value has to kick in and they'll get signed. But unfortunately, they won't. That's just the world we're in right now. Maybe it'll happen if we come back to lands. I don't know, but right now it feels like the world might just have changed in general for Counter-Strike. You can't always sort of unwind it, as it were. Maybe this is just the new landscape we're in.
You think agents may have played a role in some of these players not getting teams?
Some of them. I mean, I've certainly heard of some agents where they were just asking for way too much, and so some org just said, fuck it, we're not signing this guy. But I would say at the moment, the bigger problem with agents is more just that they're price gouge. Like, the player was going to go to your team anyway, you were going to sign him anyway. Then just some arsehole comes in and just makes it more expensive for everyone. That's why, to me, sadly, it's not a good thing. Like, logically, right, the main reason you would want good agents is to stop young players getting ripped off, right? At the moment, the majority of professional Counter-Strike is the player ripping off the org, essentially. Not really, because they've all done it to themselves. You've all chosen to be in that world. But in the sense that you are not exploiting. Like, I always say this. How are people going to bring the fucking sort of Marxist dialectic approach to economy of Counter-Strike, where the guy who is essentially the worker makes more than the factory produces? How does that make any sense? And then act like he is exploited. Like, motherfucker, by your own logic, which is like the workers deserve all of it, he's getting twice as much. By that logic, it doesn't make any sense. By your own logic, the fucking workers should be the ones that should be getting protested against. There should be a boycott against Counter-Strike players. So, no, to me, the whole thing's just nonsense, isn't it? Like, people sadly just don't understand the economy.
Just taking a step back on the Oscar thing, because I think last time I heard you speak about it, you said, okay, what you should do is what basically Oscar ended up doing, which is go to tier 2, smack everyone, and you'll get offers. But Oscar did that, and he's not, I mean, maybe he's getting offers, but it doesn't seem to be getting offers. And he's like wrecking, like, it's not even like kidding. Like,
yeah, but that's an unfair example, mate, because the problem is Oscar not getting offered. Oscar was never kicked for being bad, mate.
Yeah.
He just literally sort of like simultaneously was removed from house and then also decided, yeah, I won't try and join any of the team. The problem with Oscar is the rep around him is essentially like if there was a guy who the rumour is, when we're all at LAN, he just goes and sniffs everyone's underwear. Right? You've done nothing wrong there. You could be the best player in the world, but you can imagine why loads of players will be like, well, I don't want to play with someone like that. Like, he's basically got like the stench on him that you can't get off, mate. So the problem is, the reason I give the Oscar example is none of them have that problem. Kenny S doesn't have some weird thing about being a teammate. If Kenny S went and did what Oscar did now, he would be picked up tomorrow by like 10 orgs, you know.
Okay. Okay, so you still recommend? Okay, that's interesting.
I personally do recommend they pick up Oscar, but for some weird reason, cause fucking banana bread headed Nico said something 4 years ago, we all just keep repeating it. I mean, guys, don't you know this guy's only from Bosnia? He's not even Serbian. He's not even an actual god from the heavens who came down with the golden plates to tell us all the truth of Counter-Strike. He's just Bosnian. Like the way I did that there, not bad actually.
I like how you reference like BHL TV so many times. Like most people don't even know.
Because the thing is, what I've done intentionally is
hilarious. It's like a callback all the time.
Mate, what I've done is I've built my own little mythology within my world. Yeah, and if you know the space, I made it cooler, haven't I? If I keep saying fucking Peter guy from BHL TV, it's not as funny, is it? But if I've made him into some like false idol fucking, antichrist figure that came from the fucking Balkan region, it becomes more epic, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This video was kindly supported by Eddie, Kris with a K, Lager15, Shenlong, Wisetown, Zachary Carter, Zack Schmidt, ochs, Alexander Rao, Animosity, Kris, Dean Tanglis, Doomseer, ErikHillestad, Hades, Jdubs, Jensen Goh, John Shelton, Joseph Ginsburg, Kovacevicd, Tobias Bernasconi, Zoomba, Zyrathenia, Bot Pounder 420, and a special thanks, as always, goes out to Jerky's Minion. Would you like to suggest a topic or guests to come on my shows? Do you want to ask me a question in one of those video AMAs where I might even insult you in a funny or maybe obnoxious manner? Do you want teasers for my upcoming content, things I'm thinking of, what I might be changing? Do you want to take part in one of those long discussions where we go all over the place with the big donators? Well, if so, put your money where your mouth is using the Patreon link in the description box below to join the Screwluminati today.